let's go ahead and jump in.
So we're going to start off with a question for you. How's your day been? We have a few different questions. Is it exciting? Has it been productive, calm, too soon to tell? Or has it been a bones day or a no bones day? For context, there's a pug named Noodle on the internet in which their owner wakes them up every day and sets them up and sees if they collapse ever so slightly to the side, which means it's a no bones day, and that pretends what's going to happen for the rest of the day. And if Jane can pull the link from the notes if she has it, we can pop it in there for those that need context, or we'll add it afterwards so you can see. Oh, you never have to apologize if it's too soon to tell.
Yeah. So yeah, we have some responses coming in.
Certainly a lot of bones days. We're doing good here.
Some bones days, some no bones days.
Productive. That's good. It's hard with the gloom sometimes to really get in the groove of what you're doing. So like, sounds like people are hustling and doing what they got out, which is nice. Mm-hmm. Well, for our second warm up, then we have some trivia for you.
So we've done, those of you that have been to workshop before, we try to do a little different trivia every time. So you can share your responses in the chat. Since this is a technology focused workshop, we decided some sci-fi trivia would be relevant. So A, in Back to the Future, what type of car is used for the time machine? B, what is the operating system that controls Jurassic Park? C, what is the name of Han's ship in Star Wars? And in what book movie does a character say, "It must be Thursday? I never could get the hang of Thursdays"? So go ahead and put your answers in the chat. We'll give everyone a chance to respond. Right, so we have some responses that are coming in. Looks like we have a lot of Star Wars fans, so that seems to be the most common correct answer. So yeah, the Millennium Falcon. So we have a couple of folks who have responded to question A. So yep, that is definitely a DeLorean. And then we have a few folks who have the correct response to D, that is from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So far, it doesn't look like we have anyone who has the response for question B with Jurassic Park. Sarah shared that she's never seen Jurassic Park. I would highly recommend giving it a shot. If you haven't seen it before, it really is a fantastic movie, at least the first one, definitely, for sure. Megan shared Windows 95. So the correct response to that one, and the only reason I know this is from the one scene in the movie where the young girl, she's like, "It's a Unix system." And so that was the operating system there for Jurassic Park. So thank you all for sharing your responses to that one. And then we'll go ahead and jump into our content.
So a brief introduction. I'm Hannah Primo. I'm the instructional designer for the Ohio State University Libraries. I'm also a PhD student in learning technologies, so my everyday life just lives and breathes technology and teaching it and teaching with it.
And many of you know me by now, but just in case you don't, my name is Jane Hammonds. I am a teaching and learning engagement librarian in the university libraries. So really quickly, please do check that you're muted. You can have your cameras on or off as you prefer. Throughout the workshop, anytime you have any question or comment, please go ahead and post those in the chat, and we will stop to check those several times throughout. So we'll be using chat, we'll be using a couple of polls, we'll be using a Mentimeter. No worries, we're not going to be doing any breakout rooms, so don't have to worry about that. And we will share a follow-up email with everyone with all of the links, and we'll make sure that all of those are updated and correct so everyone can access those now.
So really briefly, what we're covering today, we're going to do a brief overview of what information literacy is, a quick learning theory primer. We're going to talk about TPACK framework, as well as a digital resource evaluation tool. And finally, go over how to put all this into practice in a really interactive way, which you guys can kind of lead the direction that we go.
Okay, so we're going to jump into our quick overview of information literacy. And I know for those of you that have been to one of the workshops before, you're probably already familiar with this. We wanted to just make sure that everyone has the same basic foundation of what we're thinking about when we talk about information literacy before we jump into thinking about how we can actually incorporate technology and relate it to teaching information literacy. So this is the definition of information literacy that is in the Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education, which was developed by the Association of College and Research Libraries. So this is the most recent sort of updated definition of information literacy that is generally used in the library profession and in higher education. Information literacy as a set of integrated abilities, including discovery of information, and understanding of how information is produced and valued, and creating new knowledge and participating ethically in communities of learning. And I highlighted a few keywords there to emphasize the way that this definition is different from previous definitions, which tended to be very skill-based. Where information literacy was finding, evaluating, and using information, whereas this presents a broader, expanded definition of information literacy that really incorporates this idea of understanding how information is produced and valued. So it's a more conceptual view of information literacy. So the way that we break this down is really thinking about information literacy as involving not just those skills and practices. And I don't want to say that those are not important, because they definitely are. But that information literacy also needs habits or dispositions, the motivation, for example, to find authoritative information, or demonstrating persistence and flexibility when searching. But you also need these conceptual understandings about how information is created, how it's accessed, how it's produced, valued, what makes sources authoritative in specific contexts. So there's a lot of bigger picture understandings that you need in order to be able to effectively deploy those skills that you have with information literacy. So what the Framework for Information Literacy tries to do is highlight what are some of the shared assumptions or understandings about information that are common across experienced researchers? What are the things that good researchers know, sometimes without even realizing that they know them, that a novice learner may not yet know, that might hinder them from being able to effectively find or use information? So I just wanted to highlight a couple of these. There tends to be a shared understanding across the experienced researchers in higher education, thinking about research as this ongoing and collaborative process within and across disciplines. So this idea of research as this process of inquiry, asking questions that are important to our discipline, that are important to society. And we recognize that we're not all going to find the right single one answer as part of this process, but it's going to be an ongoing process. Another that I wanted to highlight was this idea that we all recognize that information sources, for a variety of different reasons, have different levels of authority or different levels of value. And that context is very important for indicating what types of sources might be considered more authoritative or appropriate in certain situations. So those are just a couple of examples of some of the shared understandings about information that are common to experienced researchers. So when we think about information literacy in terms of this idea of learning bottlenecks, where are the places where students might struggle? And we have a link on there, by the way, if you're interested in learning more about information literacy concepts, you can use that link to our Teaching and Learning Resource Center. So learning bottlenecks, this is a term that comes out of the decoding the discipline model. If folks are familiar with this model, this idea that there are certain places within a course or perhaps within a program where students tend to get stuck and find themselves unable to move forward. There's something that they're not getting, something that they don't know how to do that creates this bottleneck or this stumbling block for them where they have trouble moving forward. And these can be either cognitive, so mental processes that they don't understand or don't really know how to do, but they can also be emotional. And I think with information literacy, a lot of the learning bottlenecks are emotional in terms of feeling. Students might have negative feelings about research assignments because of past experiences, or they have really negative feelings about citations and plagiarism for a lot of reasons. But these are what information literacy learning bottlenecks are, these places where students might get stuck. So I just wanted to highlight a few of the common information literacy related bottlenecks that we tend to see. One is just understanding expectations for research assignments. Students might have a very different perspective on what the purpose of a research assignment is from their instructor. And that goes back to this idea of experienced researchers understanding research as this process of inquiry and collaboration across disciplines, whereas students might have the perspective of research assignments being about compiling and summarizing information on a topic, and not really seeing this as being something that's an inquiry-driven process. Students also might not understand the expectations that we have for them to engage with the material. So that, again, we're not just wanting them to summarize, we're wanting them to analyze, to interpret, to make an argument. And so students might have this very different idea of what we are expecting them to do when we ask them to do a research assignment than what we are hoping that they will doing. Yeah, quest is the root of question, Kate shared. Yeah. Another learning bottleneck that we see that's common is identifying the appropriate places to go search for information and knowing how to use various search tools effectively. Students have grown up using Google. They may not be aware of all of the different search tools that are available to them. They may not know when it's appropriate, for example, to use an academic database versus going to Google. And even if they are familiar with using Google, or other search systems, they often really don't know how those systems are organized or work so that they can create the most effective search. And then one final bottleneck that we wanted to highlight here, evaluating information sources. This is really challenging. And there's a lot of reasons why students might struggle with evaluating information sources. One, they may just not be familiar with the characteristics of different types of information sources. They may not see sources as being of different types. A lot of things look the same because we find everything on the internet now. And so it all looks like a website or an article. They may not really recognize the different factors that indicate what makes a source authoritative and how that might play out in different contexts. Right, so we just wanted to share a few of those examples of some of the information literacy learning bottlenecks that students might encounter. Right, I think before we move on real quick, Hannah, we just check the chat and see if there are any questions. Some comments going in. Let's see. Sarah showed I've showed an increase in emotional bottlenecks keeping students from moving forward. Yes. I think that, I think the emotional bottlenecks are overlooked. We don't often give them enough attention from my perspective. Martha asked, do cognitive bottlenecks include skills deficits? Yes, I would say definitely there. Okay. So any other questions or comments that folks have, please go ahead and add them into the chat, and then we will go ahead and hand it over to Hannah.
So we're going to start talking about some of the nuts and bolts of teaching, just to give you a basic groundwork as we dig into how to apply tech to this, because you're all teachers in some way, sense, but not everyone has that same background. So I'm not going to make assumptions here that everyone has the same knowledge, but I am asking you what your favorite word from Bloom's taxonomy is. And so as a background, Bloom's taxonomy is a list of learning objectives that can help guide and plan teaching. It's a combination of knowledge process dimensions and cognitive process dimensions. to turn these into these learning objects that often can start with a student in this course will be able to. So you can pull out your phone and scan the QR code and go to a URL, or you can go to menti.com and use this code up on the screen and tell me what your favorite word from Bloom's is, either from the top of your head or from the list in front of you. And thank you, Jane. So that URL or the QR code should prompt you, and on the screen, hopefully we'll be able to see all of those popping up here. And determine seems to be a really big favorite here. Determining how to do something, or identifying how to do something, or creating, or clarifying. We have summarize, analyze, describe, deconstruct. That's a fun one. That can be applied all over the place. I'm going to give us a few more moments to make sure everyone's got something in there. Yes, respond. Great. Thank you for participating in this. We're going to move back onto this presentation because out of all those words, actually being able to see this engagement is not the only sign of learning, or not the sign of learning. Oftentimes, we're in a virtual realm or an in-person class. We associate learning with a student being able to stare at that instructor and an instructor being able to stare back at them, be that with a camera on or a camera off. But our learning outcomes that we brought up here have nothing to do with showing a student passively staring at an instructor. They're doing something with the knowledge that they're gaining almost instantly. So, I'm juggling all my screens over here, sorry. I'm going to talk about some basic pedagogy of what learning consists of. Bare bones. It starts off with attention. This is a super basic crash course, but attention is one of the essentials. It has to be intentionally put on an object to be learned. But this is where an instructor can create a problem space. So a problem space is a space that provides a learning opportunity that doesn't take away from a student's attention, be that through cognitive means, by supplying too much information, by a novice in one go. We're chunking information at you. You're getting little bits of it through this whole presentation. And that's important when thinking about attention. Or thinking about constructing a problem space and thinking of technology tools. It's important to pick one that doesn't just have fun features, lots of colors, lots of bright sounds, things that will distract, but features that are probably about that learning experience that you're developing, which we'll talk about in a bit. We have motivation. Students have to be motivated to learn, not just to perform an outcome. I think we've all heard about assignments that are checking a box. They're just doing it to get it done and carry on the way, and they're not going to learn something because they want to just complete the thing rather than actually learn that knowledge. And then we have self-efficacy. Students must believe they can learn the task ahead of them. And this falls back into this emotional block we were talking about. If they have this emotional block, this negative opinion already of this task in front of them, and don't really think that they can do it, then they're likely not going to learn the thing in front of them. It's going to take a lot of work. And this goes right back to a problem space. It helps these aspects and not hinders them. And yes, Kate says not just doing once. Learning is a behavior change. So we're continuing our crash course, and we're going to talk about a couple theories. So social cognitive theory believes that learning happens through modeling behavior. So showing how a thing is done or what happens when you do something. So that's modeling how to correct mistakes, how to apply knowledge, how knowledge works in context, not just in this little bubble of a lecture. And so that goes back to that doing. And it shows that experience the knowledge with an instructional explanation is far more effective than just an instructional explanation alone. So it's these two things that are paired. We can start talking about inquiry-based learning, and this is showing that teaching has to be more than just lecture and students listening in a virtual environment and having students actually explore their environment. So exploring the context of this information. So it's them trying stuff, like again, doing. And then we have constructivist. Students need to have a reason to learn. We're back to that motivation piece in which these authentic learning experiences are vital. So we're going back to motivation, thinking, why would they want to learn? And this means that the opportunities have to be personally relevant, situated within a social context that makes sense for them to want to. Well, not every assignment can really fit that. You still have to learn a mathematical concept, but learning how to apply that in maybe a field you're going to do eventually goes along with this theory. Thinking about your learning goals and why a student is doing something and how those course outcomes connect to the work that's being done around a student. And Kate has this great little acronym up here. It's WITHM. Motivation is what's in it for me. And so it's wonderful. That's absolutely it. So adding technology to course does not mean instant learning. Like a lot of people will go, oh, that's wonderful. Let's add this in. Let's quiz them virtually. Well, there's particular elements that are required for long-term memory to take hold and for learning to happen. And that's where there's some techniques that are proven to work better than others. So how do we add technology meaningfully? I'm going to give you a framework. It's called TPACK. It's technological, pedagogical, content knowledge. And it's this intersection of these different types of knowledge. So it's a TK, which is an instructor's technological knowledge about how a tool actually works that they're trying to use. It's PK, an instructor's knowledge of basic pedagogical methods. And it's CK, an instructor's knowledge of the content that will be taught. You can't use any one of these to cover up a weakness. So technological knowledge doesn't make up for a lack of confidence in maybe content knowledge. You still know more than your students know. And so you still need to have each of these pieces. And I will very quickly move us to a graphic that shows this intersection. So we're looking at all these pieces of knowledge and how they intersect. So a technological content knowledge is also the knowledge of how the content should fit within the technology. Technological pedagogical knowledge is the pedagogy of using technology with this knowledge. And then we have pedagogical content knowledge, and this is probably where all of you are seated pretty firmly. You know the pedagogy behind teaching your individual topic, and you know that content fairly well. And in the center is this TPACK, this technological pedagogical content knowledge. It's all these little pieces that go to make an effective learning experience. And you're probably going, how the heck do I get that technological knowledge? And I'm going to give you a tool that will help you acquire some of that technological knowledge, because it doesn't have to be this daunting thing. Finding a shiny tool, I call them shiny. They're brand new to you. They're exciting. They're something that gives so much promise for a course and engagement with students. And then you get into it and go, oh my goodness, there's so many options I can do with this. And so I am offering you this learning object, instrument review. So it's a review instrument, which allows you to rate each of these really important items on a scale to 1 to 5. And you end up with a number at the tail end of it. And in a short amount of time, you can actually realize, oh, is this going to help me meet my learning objectives? And you can use this on a tool that you haven't incorporated in a course yet, or one that someone else has made for a purpose that you're intending to use. And it looks at the quality of the content. Again, that's that content knowledge. Is it effectively going to be expressing that knowledge? Are you pairing up with those learning goals that you have for this course? Are they going to actually be able to do one of those blooms that you were talking about earlier? Is there ways to give feedback both between you and the student? And that's also an interaction usability, which is further down on that list. We're talking about motivation. Are students going to be motivated to use this? Is this a cool tool? Is it going to be too complicated for them? Is it going to use up too much mental processes in order to do something with it? And then, of course, there's accessibility and standards compliance. Standards compliance, I worry far less about. Accessibility is huge. What is good for one is good for all. And it's good to check into seeing what your institutional knowledge is for accessibility. Our institution uses WCAG 2.0. It's a quick question to your disability services going, hey, what's our standard? And they will give you a heads up. And probably somewhere in your institution has a list of tools that have passed your accessibility standards, so you don't have to think about it as much. Reusability is a bonus. It's not something that is a must, but if you can make something that will be used over and over again in multiple classes, you're saving yourself time. So I'm going to give you a quick preview of what this document looks like. And as you see, it's a 5-star rating chart with just a handful of questions. It guides you through, is the content accurate? And this is particularly if you're using someone else's pre-made resource. Is it appropriate level of detail for your students? Put a rating on it and move on to the next one. And it's a very simple form to fill out to make you feel a little more confident about the technology that you want to implement and if it's going to actually suit your needs based on what's going on here. And so this is within the handout, so you don't have to stress about finding this. And we'll make sure we send this out as an individual link as well. I'm gonna pause. There's some big questions going on.
So Summer is asking, yeah, about the
approved tools versus not approved tools. It's really going to, so that's an Ohio specific question. And Summer, like I will tackle you after the fact because that is definitely an institutional question that we can approach because there are tools that go through excessive sort of accessibility and security checks through every institution. And then there's instructors that go rogue and just pull something in or just go by the accessibility guidelines that are oftentimes included with a tool. Sometimes that's enough, sometimes it's not. And so sometimes a deeper meaning and understanding of what accessibility is. And so I'll see if I can actually find some resources to share when we share everything out that will be useful for, I was going to say the class as a whole. You're my class now. That's what's happened today. I'm going to bounce this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've shared your email there. And Summer, if you wanted to get in contact with Hannah, she would be a great person to talk about with that question.
Totally. Absolutely. So this is Lori. Lori, this tool will give you that technological knowledge, that confidence that you have that piece of the puzzle. But we're also talking about a few other things in which I'm going to transfer this over to Jane.
Thank you. So as we start thinking about how we can sort of bring this back together and think about how we can teach information literacy, how we can incorporate technology into the way that we teach information literacy. So we've got the TPACK framework. For some of us, information literacy will be part of our content knowledge, or we'll already recognize that as some of the content knowledge that we have. But others of us might be thinking, oh, is information literacy now going to be another thing that I have to add into this? Is this something completely separate that we have to add into it? Well, as we talked about before, there's a lot of things that you already know as an experienced researcher. So you have a lot of understandings about information use within your discipline and information use academically. And so even if you may not feel that you're an expert when it comes to information literacy, you probably already have a lot of knowledge that you can build on and pull into when you think about making decisions about how you're incorporating technology into your courses and what might be the most appropriate thing to use or tools to use or resources to use when you have information literacy related goals or projects. So on the one hand, as we have it up here, it is kind of a little bit separate, but it's not necessarily that we expect you to go out and become experts in information literacy. What we want to do is highlight what you already know, what those academic and disciplinary research practices that you already know that you can use to inform your thinking of the decisions that you make about how you use technology in your course. So we just want to highlight a couple of these. So as we mentioned, if you're in a discipline, a field, you probably have a lot of knowledge already about what it means to research in that discipline. But you also have just general knowledge of academic research practices. In general, we all know the types of sources that are commonly used in academic research. We recognize that there may be some differences in specific disciplines of what kinds of sources are going to be used or not. But in general, we recognize, that in peer-reviewed journal articles are often going to be used across multiple disciplines. We recognize, the use of academic databases. And again, recognizing that there may be different specific databases that are appropriate for certain disciplines. We understand what it means to act as a scholar or a practitioner or a researcher in our field. And we understand, we have this sort of, as I mentioned earlier, this shared understanding of the purpose of research assignments, of what it looks like to research in the higher education context. And so all of this is knowledge that you can build on and that you can incorporate into your thinking as you make decisions about using technology in your course. It's also important to think about not making assumptions about what students already know. And so we talked about the idea, going back to the beginning, that students and instructors can have very different perspectives on things. And there may be things that, because we are experienced researchers, because we do have this experience in higher education, we're expecting that students are going to act a certain way or think a certain way, that they're going to already know certain things, that they're already going to know where to go to find information, that they're already going to know the appropriate types of sources. So we want to avoid making any assumptions about that. But we also want to avoid any assumptions that we might be making about the digital skills that students have. We know that there's this image out there of the digital native, and students are so great with technology and they're always going to be able to do something really quickly and easily with technology. And that is just not the case. Students can struggle with digital tools just as, us older folks can when we encounter something new. So going in and making the assumption that if I use this tech tool, students are going to easily be able to pick it up, that's not always the case. So we want to make sure that as we are thinking about using technology in our course and what we might decide to do, that we're really transparent in our expectations. We're really clear about what assumptions that we are making, that we provide students with clear guidelines, and that we're really thinking about the context and when it might be appropriate to incorporate technology and when it might not. Right? Going back to what Hannah said, just bringing in technology does not mean that students are going to be learning. There may be cases when it's perfectly appropriate to use technology, but other cases where it might not. So we're going to kind of walk you through a little bit of a case study thinking about making these decisions. And I'm super excited about this. We've never tried something like this before, so hopefully it will go well. I'll let Hannah explain what we're going to do.
So I think you've all encountered Choose Your Own Adventure books, and we're doing a Choose Your Own Adventure assignment remake. We all collaboratively will decide where the problems are lying and what directions kind of an instructor should take on a small scale to see if this instructor can remake an assignment that's really not working that great right now. So we're going to dive right in. I am going to read this out loud real quick for you, but I'm also going to give you a few moments to look at it. But this is a research scenario coming from a television and broadcasting course. And it's a research project that an instructor signs. It's usually a year-end thing. And he is telling students this explicitly. This is the description they're getting, that it should be a critical analysis of a specific topic, a genre, or theme, or any issue related to television production and or broadcasting. That it should not be a report. It should act as a critical inquiry into a specific area with a particular point of view, much like the authors that they'll read in this semester or quarter. And he's telling them that the final paper is 5 to 7 pages in length, but it can be longer if you need it. And you can include links to digital media as supportive content, but all evidence must be properly cited in text and on the reference page. So this is the assignment we're looking at currently. And it's still here on this page. They've been doing this assignment for quite some time. They've identified that there's really a lack of substance to the things that they're getting back, and that students are really heavily leaning on digital media resources, ones that are kind of obviously found through Google rather than through the extensive databases that are available through the institution. And the citations are all over the place. They are getting just links dropped in with maybe an author, combinations of MLA and APA. Someone tried to do Chicago, so they're a mess as far as he's concerned. So the question we are posing to you, which you should see a poll pop up on your screen shortly, is, do we believe this is an information literacy bottleneck? Do we think this is a pedagogical bottleneck, or is it both of them? And as those votes come in, we'll make our decision on how we're going to revise this. Oh, everyone's agreeing. It's both.
It looks like most folks have been able to respond. Give it 5 more seconds. We'll go ahead.
We're in so much unison that I don't think it'll matter at this point. So, both it is. Let's see what kind of changes he can make to this. So they've decided that this is both an information literacy and a pedagogy one. They've obviously gone through some of Jane's courses to realize what information literacy is and went, time for a revamp. So they've added examples for how to expect citations. They've shared some useful databases to find information related to the topics in the course. They've provided pre-assignments that show what critical analysis papers actually look like, modeling what success would be in this one. And they've shifted the topic selection, suggesting that students focus their paper on roles they would like to take on in the television industry, working to make this topic personally more relevant. So the question is, do we think they're creating a good problem space with these changes? You can answer in the chat or with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Do you think that they're helping students feel more motivated? Or is there more authentic and meaningful tactics being used in this assignment? Do we think that students are maybe feeling a little more capable of learning this task and there's less assumptions being made about previous knowledge while modeling new behavior? We've got a thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm seeing several thumbs up popping up and with folks. Yep, lots of thumbs up.
Exciting. So we're in agreement that, yeah, there's some good shifts that he's done. He's learned some things. He's not afraid to try something new and is applying new stuff. But then he started talking to an instructor, a fellow instructor, and went, ooh, that technology you're using in a course is really neat. So, ooh, oh no, I've broken things. Here we go. So they've changed their question. They've decided, I'm using that new technology that you're using too. One person was making blogs, having their students post blogs. Another one was making video presentations. And they're like, I'm a TV course. Of course they should be making videos. And so he changed this assignment to a blog post with a recorded video presentation inside of it. That's the technology that they've used because they thought this was really neat. And they're telling people it should be 3 minutes long. It should contain appropriate audio and visual effects. And it should still be a critical analysis of a specific topic or genre. More specifically, those changes that we talked about earlier, specific genre useful to the student. But at the same time, it's 3 minutes, and it still should not be a report. It should still act as a critical inquiry into the specific area. So this assignment has really turned on its head at this point. So I'm asking you again, and there should be a survey that'll pop up shortly. Yeah, Kate, I'd like a rubric too. As a student, holy cow, would I like a rubric for this. So where do we see a problem here? Is this still an information literacy problem, or are we dealing with a technical knowledge problem? Whoop, we're kind of floating. It looks like I should have had a both one here.
I think we have most folks that have responded. 5 more. Amanda shared that she would have voted both. So, and you can share that in the chat as well if you think you would have.
Absolutely. This instructor is gung-ho. They're ready to make changes. They're just a little too ready and haven't quite reflected, it seems like, before actually just doing the thing.
So
it looks like technological knowledge has won. So let's see how he could approach this. Well, we talked about the learning object review, and I'm going to place some of this in your plate. Has he looked at the content quality, addressing how these students are going to do it? We talked about rubrics, so maybe that's a no. How is this applying to a learning goal? We're talking about both problems. Have we identified a learning goal? So I'm going to give you moments if you want. You can unmute. You can say it in the chat where these problems are, and perhaps where in the technological or the information literacy side that they might have addressed this better.
Amanda shared a great comment of what kind of scaffolding they are doing to orient students to video making. So that goes back to that, what we talked about, the assumptions that an instructor might make about students' technological knowledge, and whether or not they really can do what they are expected to do.
And Sarah's asking about, what is the goal? Is the goal to use the tool, or is the goal to complete a critical inquiry? So maybe offer a video response as an option, but still allow them to complete that paper, which would allow both sides of this. They would practice these skills while also actually being able to get into the nitty-gritty of something. Presentation design, yeah, like, what is expected? There's no modeling for what's expected out of this. None whatsoever, let alone what's within the TV realm of what might be expected.
And Sarah also shared accessibility as a concern with this as well. And definitely, absolutely. I think from the perspective of the tool that has been used, whether it's accessible to everyone, and then whatever they create, whether that's going to be accessible to everyone.
Yeah, Amanda immediately asked, well, how do they make their videos accessible? Why are we thinking students understand what accessibility is? He's making a lot of assumptions here, but maybe we're making assumptions that he knows what accessibility is. So it's another lesson for him to learn. Well, I think we have some suggestions. Let's see what he did. What does appropriate editing mean? Yeah, what does appropriate editing mean? Underneath, are you in like the Lori, Sarah, right now looking at it?
No, that was one of the things that sticks out to me when you read the revised assignment. It was like, yeah. Okay, does that mean that you're cutting out ums and uhs, or does that mean that you're putting in an opening graphic and a closing graphic and have like a scrolling list of references? So.
Brian goes, quick cuts and lots of explosions? Yes. And that's huge. That's absolutely huge. What is the standard for this level, particularly because we're in a television themed course? Likely these folks aren't here just because. Yeah, jump scares. Exactly. That's the goal, for the coffee to be spilled all over the instructor's computer every time they open a new video. So it's huge. Why aren't we giving these sort of levels of expectations? So these are the final changes they did. They went and consulted with someone, and they decided that they did need to add scaffolding, but they've decided also to minimize it down to just a video presentation, not a blog post on top of it. Seemed like a bit much to them. Someone pointed out how heck was he going to grade both of these pieces embedded in each other, and he went, nah, we're just going to do one. And so it's still 3 minutes. but he's also still given those examples of where you can find information. Like we talked about earlier, going like, hey, here's where you find these pieces in our databases, and here's really good websites to find those graphics that I want included. We're also talking about, hey, often those in television will need to perform these analyses as requested by executives. Hey, we have a bigger motivation. This is how it sits inside the field. And we have an example below of what the heck the thing is supposed to look like. We're modeling things now, and it will still be expected to be cited, but in APA format, which he's supplying library-led resources to assist with what the heck does that mean even. So students aren't going like, great, it looks like that. Now, how do I make my thing look like that? And I think we've brought up some really good changes that he should still include. Maybe it should be both a paper as well as this. And why am I doing this? Where are these learning outcomes? Why aren't they covered here in this? So this instructor has examined some bits and pieces of their pedagogical knowledge, their content knowledge, which I presume they probably have a lot of, and their technological knowledge they're working on. But you can see how these bits and pieces have to connect to be a little more cohesive in the file run. I did pick a terrible assignment, and I tried to pick the worst sort of implementation of technology that I could. That was a challenging one. And sometimes it's way more subtle when you're looking at it, going, why aren't students needing this? Why aren't students reaching this point? And perhaps less of how can technology fix that problem, but more of how can I enhance students' knowledge and long-term memory of something with technology. So we talked about the TK, the technological knowledge. Do they think this is better? Like thumbs up, thumbs down? Is it better? Does it still need to be better? Do they still need to go back to the drawing board and really think about this? Yes, Kate, I must do this assignment before requiring the students to do so. I think that gives a good idea for what the expectations could or really should be, particularly when you're asking for quite a bit of background work. Writing a paper isn't small fry, but if someone's never touched a recording device to film themselves, you have to scaffold that into assignments to figure out how much are you actually asking of those students. So I want to thank you. You can get a hold of me at primo.8 and Jane at hammonds.73. And if you have questions, concerns, I'll leave that to Jane.
Yeah, so we have about 10 minutes left. So please go ahead and share questions, comments, concerns that you have, and we'll hang out and see what folks are interested in talking about. Yeah, Hannah, there was a discussion that 3 minutes of video can be a lot to fill, can also be a lot to grade. We definitely recommend, if you plan to do video assignments, give students a time limit, make them stick with it. The first time I ever tried to do video assignments, I got some 15-minute ones. Yeah, no. So Kate shared perhaps doing this as a team and assignment and encouraging peer review. That could be helpful. Although I think we also know that working in teams is a skill as well. So students may need some scaffolding for that.
I laugh, Megan. Megan wrote, I give students 5 minutes and have to constantly counsel them to stop talking as fast as humanly possible to fit all the information in. They need help with scope. And even I struggle with talking as fast as humanly possible because, man, is that a habit. But scope, yeah, goodness gracious. This instructor gave them kind of the world, the absolute world. Go at it, figure out what you need, and 3 minutes. Like, whoop. And that applies for almost any assignment, really. How are they supposed to know? they don't know this sort of thing. It's the stuff that's inherent to us that we'd be able to scale something down.
Yeah, and folks that have been at one of my workshops before know that that's something that's an ongoing challenge for folks. I'm always rushing at the last couple of minutes, I feel like, so.
Brian pointed out, is APA really how video gives reference? I'm going to tell you that's my background in not actually knowing and not doing a deep dive into searching. We're going to assume that the instructor might know, but maybe they don't know what references in video format should technically be, just in a paper sort of written thing. They might be an academic in television rather than someone working in television. And Amanda talks about leveraging technology they might possibly be more familiar with, like social media, TikTok, Instagram Reels, something that they might see on a regular basis and have already tried.
So please go ahead and continue. If you have questions or comments, you can go ahead and post those in the chat. You can unmute if you would like as well. I will share that we have one more workshop in this workshop series for the fall that is coming up. And the next one is exploring information literacy and social justice. So I will put the link to that in the chat for anyone who's interested in registering for that. That one will be our last one for the fall, but we'll be back and have more workshops offering as soon as we can.
And as a final note, I will have some links in the resources that you'll be getting in case figuring out how to make a technology work in a course might be really intimidating. There's some wonderful resources that have pre-made information literacy technology assignments or just pre-made information literacy assignments itself that you can add some technology to that are wonderful, vetted, that you can just pull from and associate with your courses. So those will be with some goodies to exist for you after the fact.
So a couple of things that have come through. Sarah shared, can you share the link where all of the session recordings are housed? So in the follow-up email, I will share the links to all of those recordings. Right now, they're all still separately in Zoom. They will all eventually be on the library's YouTube channel as soon as I can finish the transcription. So I'll share the link for that as well. And then Kate asked, Hannah, how often do teachers consult with you?
I was just typing up a response. So I'm pretty specialized within libraries, actually. We have a few regional campuses as well as our Columbus campus, and it's just usually librarians that consult with me, or I assist through a few other people in talking about possible information literacy additions and revisions. And so that number really varies on like when are they prepping for courses and when are they being asked. So summers are lulls, falls get exciting, and spring can too.
And I did share in the chat our link to our teaching and learning department within the libraries, our common shared email. If you do have questions about whether or not we can help you, you can go ahead and send an email to that one, and we'll talk through what kind of assistance we might be able to provide. Hannah, did I get that right? It's LibTeach, right? At OSU.
It is. It's been wonderful chatting with everyone today. I appreciate all your participation, particularly during lunchtime. I know that's a challenging one, so all of this, much appreciated. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And if you started off with a no bones day, I hope you find your way to a good bones day, to succeeding in all the things that you were doing. Good job snacking. I give you extra bonus points for that. This is a good way to do that.
Thanks everyone. Yeah, it's great to see you all. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, send us an email. We're happy to talk more. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. This was great. And I think it went so well.
I'm pleased. It timed itself perfectly.
Yeah. So this is exciting. So we'll have to think in the future additional collaborations that we can do.
Yeah. And I'll be reaching out to Summer too.
Yeah.